And I'm very pleased to invite everybody here today, or invite you. I guess you're here already, aren't you? And we're going to listen to Khaliela a little bit. Khaliela, I want to say first, is one of those people who's been so supportive of the Writers Guild. And she goes online and posts things and helps me so I don't have to be constantly putting things on Facebook. She does it for me. So I appreciate that, Kayla, and I just wanted to make a public announcement of how much I think of you for that. Um, Kalela has been with us. It's been a couple of years now, hasn't it, Kalela?
I think so.
Yeah. And she is the leader, official leader of the Palouse Writers Guild. And which, there's been a little bit of change about how everything's done in Idaho. They used to have an overarching organization that I believe sort of disbanded, but all of the various areas of the state have their own regional sort of group. And Bonnie is with one, and Kalela's with one, and Herbert Weems can't be with us today, Bonnie, because he had to have a physical rotator cuff physical problem. Um, I tried to explain that shouldn't stop him from being here, but he seems that the guy doing the physical therapy wouldn't appreciate it. So there we are. Kalela, I want to know about your writing history when you started. Um, you know, we all kind of know why we want to be writers, but maybe you've got something special to say there. And I think you've written a number of different books, and I'm not sure about all of their subgenres. I think they're all fiction. You may have written some nonfiction. Can you tell us a little bit about your history?
Yeah, Linda. I actually started writing by accident. My grandmother, Marilyn Cork, was the editor and a reporter for Priest River Times for many years. And as a child, we would play a newspaper reporter, my brother, my cousins, and I would get to be the managing editor. And they would come to me with really awful stories like dinosaurs broke into the school gym, and I would have to cut them. And so I started writing, and I would, bring these to my grandma, and I'd be like, look what we wrote. And there was one really great story that she saved. I mean, she just sent it to me like 2 or 3 years ago that I had wrote when President Reagan was running for election, and it was how France got mad and wanted the Statue of Liberty back. And so it's always been there.
Uh-huh.
And then she writes a lot and works with Idaho Magazine down in Boise. And so on a lark, I just submitted to them and I got accepted. So then I started writing magazine articles.
Great.
And it just sort of, this is my boss, and I'm not talking to him right now. um, so it blossomed from there. I did a lot of magazine articles. In grad school, I wrote scholarly works, mostly revolving around my major, which is economics. So I have journal articles. My grandma is a history buff, and I got into that as well. And so I've written for the Latah Legacy, some really deep history things as well. That's scholarly. But my love is fiction. And again, it was an accident. Because I mean, I had this creative writing bug ever since I was a child, but I was listening to a song with my son. I was helping him move in, and it was like, imaginary lovers don't argue and they never fight. And I looked at him, and I was like, well, I don't know who their imaginary lovers are, but mine fight with me all the time. And so I just started writing this story about a woman who fought with her imaginary lover. Well, it was a real lover. They were my imagination. But she got along great with her lover's brother. And then I started hitting my brother up for ideas. It's like, what should they do? Oh, they should go hunting. They should go fishing. And then at the end of the summer, it was 105,000 words. It was a book.
Wow.
And it was just an accident, but it was crap. I mean, we all know what first drafts look like. And I was like, I've got to do something with this. I have to learn. And so that's when I started reaching out to writing groups and getting involved with writing groups. Like, how do I take this hot mess of a book and turn it into something publishable? And that was my first book, Klara's Journey, which is turned into a trilogy. So the second book will be released in June. The third book is a half finished draft. And then with the work that I've done for the Historical Society here in Potlatch, as well as for Latah County, I am working on a book of ghost stories set at Camp Grizzly for Boy Scouts, and all of them are true ish, mostly. I mean, they're all based on historical figures who were at the camp at, at different times in history.
Uh,
So like John Griswold was probably murdered on the site because he was the first person to homestead there, and then they found gold on the property and he just disappeared. And I'm assuming the prospector who found the gold killed him, you know? So there's a lot of really great things that go into, you know, that you can pull from history to put in novels. And that's another project that I'm working on as well.
cool. Well, talk a little bit about Klara's journey, and the trilogy. What kind of story is it? What's sort of the plot, or and your approach to it? It's a little bit different. It's not just straight fiction, right?
It for the most part, it's fiction. It's a high fantasy trilogy. The difference between my work and a lot of other high fantasies is that I'm actually set in the Iron Age, whereas most high fantasy is sort of Arthurian or Middle Ages, and I just go way back. I love the Iron Age. It's also pagan fiction because I'm dealing with, the gods and goddesses at the time. So my favorite deity is Obnoba. She's got like 7 or 9 inscriptions down there in the Black Forest and along the Danube, which is where my people are from. So there was a lot of research that went into it just to make sure that, it was as accurately represented as I could, knowing that we'll never fully know what's going on. But yeah, it's a high fiction and it focuses a lot on women's issues. So I deal with, you know, reproductive rights, pregnancy, consent, things like that as well within the novel.
And within that time period. Do you do any time jumping, or does it pretty much stay in that era?
It stays in that era. I haven't mastered time jumps. I'm not Diana Gabaldon. Um, but within that era, a lot of people don't realize how much was available to women to control their futures and their destinies. So I worked with a botanist who's a good friend of mine who was from WSU. And so one of the things he warned me is like, the plants that you were telling people to use, like that would work. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, but they're going to kill themselves. um, because you have to make sure you get dosages right. So, things like pennyroyal or St. John's wort or, tansy, St. John's wort's for depression, chamomile, like any of these herbs that we associate with, chamomile for calming, St. John's wort for happy. But like, so pennyroyal is an aborifant, tansy is an aborifant, ergot of rye, like all of these things, they work. But you got to be careful about your dosage. One of the things that was really fun in my research is I discovered that women would accidentally kill their husbands by serving their husband the wrong tea. So they had mixed a strong dose as an aborifant and mixed up theirs with their husbands. And I'm like, not buying that this is mixed up, not at all.
Wow. Wow. It just made me think about something when you were talking about this. I thought, a lot of people want to learn new things, but because of time and the way it all goes, we just can't get started. It's one of those things. And I thought, golly, you could take on the chore of writing a book just to force yourself to go ahead and do that new learning, because it sounds great. It's like you took a little mini course in herbals, remedies and stuff. That's kind of neat.
Yeah, and it wasn't just herbal remedies. I got a great book um I think I got it out of Germany, that was recipe reconstructs from campfires and from hearth fires where they reconstructed the recipes of the time. And I spent about 6 weeks eating from these reconstructed recipes. And
Wow.
that was just so fun. And there's a great quote Caesar said, a Celt will sell its soul for a cask of wine. And after eating basically lentils and beer and leeks for 6 weeks, I was like, yeah, I'd sell my soul for a cask of wine.
And my husband has told me before that he he read some things and about slavery, and when they brought slaves into the country, they were feeding them lobster constantly, and they got so sick of lobster they wanted anything but and now it's a delicacy, but back then it was like, oh my God, don't give me more of that. So times do change and stuff, but have you thought about putting recipes up on Facebook or something so people can try them?
I haven't thought about, I put some recipes, occasionally on my website, but I
Uh-huh.
never did a recipe from the book. And so I should.
Yeah,
I do have a link to
mhm.
the book that I used. Um, because I ended up going out and buying this book because I loved the recipes so much. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
I could do some recipes from the book.
Cool, cool. That'd be neat, I think. Well, if you feel like it, if anybody got any comments or questions at this point, you wanna, share with everybody, or I know Chris ought to have something because she did her first book, The Murder at Manitou, and she's written all of her stuff around flowers and plants that go in the garden. So, but I think I saw Elena. Elena, was that you kind of waving? You, if you unmute, you can. Whoops!
I got it.
There you go.
Oh, can you hear me?
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of fascinating what you're writing about. It's really interesting. And you're living in Potlatch.
Yes.
And I used to live in Moscow, Idaho, and Potlatch is really like Viola, it's very close. And they have a really nice, how you call it, nursery there. Do you know the famous Potlatch nursery?
Yeah, I'm just down the road from them, actually.
Yeah. Are you in contact with them about all these herbs and stuff? Because they might
No,
know a lot.
no, I have a friend who's a botany professor at WSU, so I pick his brain when I need herbal help.
Okay. So I have a question about the website. You said you have a website. How often is it visited by just from out of space?
I get about 1,500 views a month.
1,500 views. And
Yeah.
so can you share the website?
Yeah, and I'll put it in the chat as well. But it's just my name. So it's www.KhalielaWright,
Okay.
KHALIELAWright.com.
How do people find you?
I have no idea. Um, I have an active social media presence, so I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I have a link in the back of my book. So that's one way. I have a YouTube channel, so they can find me that way. They find me. I don't always know how they find me, but they find me.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you.
And Clara's Journey, I would tell you, do a little plug for Aunties. We've got some copies there in the store and can order them quickly from Ingram, but I'm sure they're available other places, including one place we won't mention. But so yeah, go for it.
Yeah, they're available everywhere that books are sold. So like Bonnie, if you're up in Sandpoint, if you wanted to order from Vanderford's, you could do that. But Aunties would probably be happy to ship to you as well.
But you have it on Amazon, right?
It is. Like I said, it's everywhere books are sold. So if you're someone like me who boycotts Amazon, you could get it through Walmart or an independent bookstore. I
Okay.
think Bezos doesn't need all of our money.
Can you tell me why you boycott Amazon?
I don't like the fact that a lot of it goes through resellers and it artificially inflates price. So like my book, the list price is $21.99. And if you go to Auntie's, you'll probably pay $21.99. I have seen it listed on Amazon for as much as $43
Oh my gosh.
because an independent someone else is going to buy it at, $21.99, and then they want to resell it and make a profit themselves. And so a lot of things on Amazon are actually more expensive than they would be if you would just go to your local bookstore. Most people don't realize that.
Yeah.
And I would throw out that if you do buy any of the books that we do in the book clubs and stuff for Aunties, be sure and request a 15% discount, because we do that. And the other thing I would throw in is the reason that Amazon is a direct competitor with all independent bookstores, with all bookstores. And they are set up in such a way that they can do things that are, and they have driven a lot of businesses out of business by their competitive nature, the way they do it. It's a lot easier to run a blind, there's nothing there. I mean, are there people there? Sometimes, a few, but it's nothing like the infrastructure of supporting our society with local businesses. And so that's the primary.
Yeah. And so one more question, who was the publisher of your book?
I am self-published. I founded my own publishing company called Heart and Hind Publishing Company. And then through that, it's available through Ingram, which is a distributor, which, we'll get it out to everywhere, like Powell's, Barnes and Noble, you name it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other comments? Bonnie, you had wanted to say something. Yeah.
I just want to tell you that it's delightful to know that Marilyn is your grandmother. She is great. She used to be a member of the group, of course, and she doesn't come anymore because, is it her hearing or her eyesight? Which is it?
It's her hearing.
It's her hearing.
Yeah, and it's gotten to the point where we have to use a whiteboard now to write to her.
That's what she said that one time. And so anyway, she's delightful. What a neat connection.
And I know Patrick's been waving at me.
Yeah.
Yes, first I have to get in the Potlatch plug. My father was born and raised in Potlatch, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, in Potlatch you can't live more than 1 mile from anyone else in Potlatch.
No, it's physically impossible.
Now you mentioned the genesis for your book being kind of a ongoing storytelling with, I believe, your brother.
Yeah, my brother and my kids.
What authors did you read? Oh, and your kids. What authors did you read, or genres did you read that kind of fueled this? Or did you find that you just wrote the story outside the genres you typically read?
I sort of wrote the story outside the genre because I wasn't planning on doing anything with it. Like, it literally was an accident where I would just call my brother and be like, what are we going to do next? And he'd go, wolves should attack. And I'm like, okay, wolves will attack. So that's how it went. And then it took time to structure things afterwards. I read a lot of fantasy, so there's that connection, but I read a lot of everything. So I was reading The Secret Nature of Wisdom and, The Secret Lives of Trees. And so that brings in a lot of the naturalist things as well. And when you read a wide variety of things, you have so much more to draw from and so much more influence to put into your books. There's even a scene involving cannabis, which was The Secret Desire of Plants. My son was reading that, and then we learned things about pot, and we're like, oh, I have to rewrite a pot chapter because that's not how it worked back then. They would actually, pipes were a new world thing, so they didn't use a pipe, or they didn't roll it. They would actually just like burn a bowl in the middle of a tent and then go in and inhale, sort of like you would for vaporizing something.
Wow.
And so yeah, all kinds of influences that just came from everywhere.
Any other thoughts?
I will say that didn't influence me in the writing, but more influenced me in the editing, because I hadn't read it until later, was Stephen King's On Writing.
Wow.
I
Okay.
loved that book. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. And that thing just motivated me to keep editing and to get everything put together. When I was reading about all of his rejections, I was like, man, if he gets turned down and still does it, I could too. Why not?
Caleb, maybe you could talk a little bit about your editing process. Like, do you hire someone to edit? Do you work with other writers, or just tell us a little bit more about that?
All of the above. So first thing is self edits. Like I get the messy draft out and then I go through and I try to clean it up as best as I can so as not to shame myself when I start sharing it. And then I have a really great critique group. I meet with 3 guys. We all sort of write fantasy, horror, so we're in the genre, it's not like we've got somebody who writes memoir who wants something different. We're all right there. And we meet every single Friday, and we go through everybody's work. And so they're my sort of my alpha readers. They get sort of the first group. And then after that, I'll do like another round of self edits, taking into account all of their suggestions, anything that I've come up with in the meantime. And then I do hire editors. So I have a fellow that I work with for my copy and line edits. And then I have a separate person that I work with for proofread before it's ready to go.
Did you have, because that happened to me when everything has been pretty much proofread and we think it's all ready to go with all the people who helped me to work on it. And then all of a sudden the publishing company, which is I worked with the self-publishing company, they do the product and you look at it and there is a whole bunch of things that are happening that did not happen in your manuscript. And it's because of the computerized corrections. Has that happened to you? Because
no.
Well, you're lucky.
You
actually go through that again and you don't know when that is going to stop.
I work with a company called Demaza, which creates a proof and a galley for me so that when I send that to my proofreader, it's already formatted and he can see what those are. So if there are any corrections, they're being caught ahead of time.
And the computer does not self-correct anything anymore.
No, there should not be any of that.
But that happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's a lot of small businesses that are selling their services as editors and publishers and that are just using AI. It sounds like maybe they're using AI to help generate changes to your manuscript. When you say different things happening, usually editors don't change what's going on unless they talk to you about it first. It sounds like they are.
I mean, in my case, what happened, there were apostrophes put automatically by the computer in places where they shouldn't have been. And so I had to go through all of this and tell the publisher to remove all those because that was incorrect.
Yeah, when I'm working with my editors, we actually have a style sheet, and it actually, it starts with the copy edit and the line edit, and then that style sheet moves from editor to editor. That way it'll tell them, what the preferred spelling is for, cauldron, or what the preferred spelling is for draft, because you could do DRAFT or DRAUGHT, right? So all of those things go into my style sheet, so that they can program, they can look at how exactly I want it done when they're doing the editing.
Okay.
Joan, you got your hand up, but
Yeah. Khaliela, how much time or what's your writing routine like? How much time do you spend writing each day and how much do you spend on marketing each day?
Well, that's the crux of it now, isn't it? I try to dedicate 2 hours a day to writing, just do it every morning before work. Now, writing doesn't necessarily mean writing a novel. I can only give 2 hours of my life every day to all of the writing things. So on Mondays, I like to dedicate my 2 hours on Mondays to marketing. And that could be reaching out to libraries. It could be, reaching out to bookstores. It could be posting, videos on YouTube, like whatever it is, I do marketing Mondays. That way I just have a dedicated time for that. Then on Fridays, because Friday's my day off from work, I try to do something more fun. So that's when I would like work on my website, put out a blog post. I've got a newsletter. You're all welcome to join my newsletter. So those sorts of things I write on Fridays. And then all the other days of the week, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, is writing a novel or a short story. Like I just put together a short story for Idaho Magazine. Or, I mean, it's the act of writing rather than, marketing, publishing stuff. But people say you should write every day, and I absolutely believe you should write every day, but you shouldn't think that that has to be your novel every day, because sometimes you just need a break from your novel. Like sometimes you're like, my characters are messed up, they all need therapy, and I'm going to go write something else for a little while.
like that. Patrick, you're muted because there was noise, so.
There we go. All right. Now, if I like to think I learned a lot from between each novel. From the second novel, hopefully it's better than the first, third was better than the second, et cetera, et cetera. What lessons are you carrying forward, or did you carry forward into your second novel?
There's just so much. One of the things that I got hit with a lot is, you need to add more emotion. If you guys don't have this book, you need this book, the emotion. So that adding more emotion, getting into the head of my characters versus assuming that my audience is going to know what my character is feeling. So that was a lot of it. The other thing is working on dialects so that each of my characters has a distinct voice. So my character Ruis is very common and he uses way more slang than, the king would, of course. And so those sorts of things. And that actually takes me several passes. So when I'm doing my self-edit, I will do a self-edit where I just focus on emotion. And then I will do a self-edit where I just focus on dialogue. Because I don't have the skills to do it all at once. I have to be like, okay, I'm thinking dialogue now. I am thinking emotion now. I am thinking setting now. I keep this with me. You can't read it probably, but it's the 6 things I need to have in every scene. So dialogue, interior monologue, setting details, character description, character action, and a sensory detail. So, and that's something that I didn't have in book 1. And the more I learn and I can employ in future books. So it's a learning process, and I try to bring as much with me as I can.
Have you found you have greater strengths in certain areas for such as world building versus character development, dialogue versus emotion?
Yeah, I'm a super world builder. Ever since I was a child, instead of counting sheep when I couldn't sleep, I would build worlds. And so I would lay in bed and I would start with one person and I'd be like, okay, I have a person. I have a person and a cat. I have a person and a cat and a dog, and they live in a house. And the house is on this street. And I would just slowly build this world until I couldn't hold it all in my head and it would collapse. And so because I've played that game ever since I was a child trying to go to sleep, and I still play that game when I need to go to sleep, I'm really good at world building, but not so great at some of the intricacies like dialogue.
Somebody wanted you to write down on the thing, the,
Oh, those 6 things.
and I already put in dialogue and sensory. There was 2 that I caught.
I'll get them.
Great.
So dialogue, interior monologue, oops, setting details. And part of that can go with your character description as well. You know, like, do you need to remind them that she's still wearing a skirt or whatever it is? And then character action, what are they doing? And the character action helps you break up those beats and tags. So, you know, if you're not saying said all the time, you could be like, Klara slammed her fist on the table, and, you know, so that helps as well. And then the sensory detail.
Yeah, that's one thing that's always bothered me. I can't stand it when I'm reading a book and everybody is, he said, she said, he said. I'm like, just, you know, so I've always advised people, try to say something a little different, you know, even if it's, he sputtered. I mean, I don't care, just something so that you're not constantly back and forth with the he said, she said.
So I've got them all there in chat now.
Yay. We screeched. I like that one. You know, hey, there's rules, right? And they were designed because of some problem. Somebody came up with these rules and it became the thing to do. But times change. We all change. And as times change, we need to be able to adjust some of these rules a little bit. And people shouldn't feel like they must do it a certain way. It's just like E.E. Cummings. Some people can't stand him, but he writes everything in lowercase and no punctuation. And the man got away with it. And he was, you know, he wrote lots of things. So, you know, rules schmules. Main idea is don't lose your reader. Don't confuse them. You know, and if you're doing books like a mystery or whatever, don't try to trick them. And in the end, don't change your characters so they do something horrible after you've already got your reader to love that character. Suddenly they're a bad person. We're so disappointed. It's like, no, that
Go.
your doggy wants to participate.
We have a love-hate relationship.
We've still got another 20 minutes that we can use if you wish. Anybody have some more questions or things you want to share? I would share that, you know, you're going to hear news over time about an event coming up at Auntie's that I think Eric Schubaugh is putting together. He's wanting to start an annual book fest. I think he's calling it Northwest Independent Book Fest. And he now has a page on Facebook. If you want to find it, go ahead and use that name to look it up. And it's an open public group. You'll be able to follow the conversation. He's got a sign up sheet connection where you can volunteer to do things. On that same day, which is in celebration of Independent Bookstore Day. It's not a bookstore, but the library is pretty darn close, and we're having an INWG sponsored event there that same day, And I'm designing it to not really be in competition, but to be complementary to what will be at the bookstore. But I wanted an opportunity for authors who could not be in the event at Auntie's because it's limited in terms of, you know, availability. There's like 20 authors from 20 different or 5 different groups. And so it's going to be an open author thing where authors can bring in their books at the thing. There'll be little discussion groups and stuff, but you'll get more information about all of this hopefully soon. I'm kind of tickled to see that 3 of the guild's 4 authors that are going to be participating in the event at Auntie's, Chris, Janet, and Khaliela, are all here today. That's kind of neat. Frank, the hero, is not. He's our 4th. Now, Janet had originally just got on a waiting list because Steve had thought he would be doing it, but he had something come up that he needs to tend to, and so it's it. But this is wonderful. We have y'all showed up. That's neat.
I have a question for Khaliela. What 3 writers, living or dead, would you like to have dinner with?
Oh, Diana Gabaldon for sure. Stephen King for sure. Probably Sarah Maas.
I was going to say I'd rather have dinner with those that are alive. That's an old joke.
Well, this is a wish list, Linda.
I know, but maybe someday in the other life I'll be able to visit with some of these people. But
So for anybody living and dead, the one person that I would really love to have dinner with would be Queen Boudica. She was Queen of the Iceni from Wales. And I've always wondered, knowing what she knows now, would she have still stood against the Romans? She actually pushed the Romans back. She was out doing something when the Romans came to her village and they wanted to talk to the king, but the king wasn't the man in charge because Celts were very egalitarian. And he was like, no, you have to talk to my wife. My wife is the one in charge. So they raped her daughters. And when she got back, she took her warriors and she pushed them almost to the sea. She was pillaging villages. She was burning things. And then she turned and went north to get other Romans that had established themselves in other places. And what she didn't know was that there was a ship of new recruits that were coming to relieve these guys coming behind her. And so she got trapped between them. And she ended up, her and her daughters, committing suicide on the battlefield. And so I've always wanted to know, you know, if you knew that the new recruits were coming, would you have taken the girls and ran, or would you have still fought? But she's from my time period, or at least the period that I write in.
what are the years for that time period approximately?
So I actually write a little bit later. So I write at about 500 BC to about 0 AD. But Queen Boudica was from 64, I think six, maybe it was early, like 58, somewhere in there, 58 to 64 AD. And so there's actually a statue of her in Wales, of Boudica and her daughters.
I'm back to the dinner question because it got me thinking, and I'll tell you my 3, and you'll wonder what the heck's wrong with me. It'll give you something to think about. Mine are Einstein, Shakespeare, and Jesus. So now, whatever you want to make of that, I figure it's been one heck of a conversation.
Would you have some specific topics you wanted them to address?
Life. You know, what is life? And I think they they all addressed that from different directions, and I would love to, I bet you anything that all three views come together nicely, and there wouldn't be as much arguing as we might think, but there's 1,000 others, but I can't afford to have that many people at a dinner. So, oh, goody. Khaliela put do you want to talk about that a little bit, Khaliela, the Palouse writing contest?
Yeah, so every year we do a writing contest. Entries have to be postmarked by February 15th, and we have a couple different things going on. We have a first chapter contest, which is first chapter of your novel, any genre. The other is that we have a short story contest. So if you have been published, you're going to enter in the general short story category. If you have never been published, enter in the novice category. And then we also do an award for outstanding young writer. So if you know writers under the age of 18, get the word out, because we do honor them. And I think that's a $50 award that we give to our outstanding young writer. Anyway, all the information is on the website.
Thanks for putting that in the chat. I hope everyone has the chat available to them. If you should be able to open it up from your Zoom directions at the bottom of the screen, all those buttons, one of those ought to be able to open the chat. It might, if you have a lot of things down there like I do, you might have to go to the button that says more and open that up, and that'll give you. But if not, if you weren't able to get the chat, let me know, email me, and I can send you the one that this recording will save. Okay?
Okay. I don't think I have it.
Okay. Well, anybody else have anything to announce or share or ask or, jabber?
Linda?
Yo, where am I?
I just wrote in the chat. I was kind of looking for that Northwest Independent Book Fest thing you mentioned, but I can't find it. So where do we find it again?
It's on Facebook, if you're a member of Facebook.
So I looked at that too, and it looks like, well, one of the questions that gets asked is, who invited you to join? Can we say that you invited us, Linda?
Yeah, sure. But if the site, when I joined, it didn't ask me that.
Yeah, I joined just a couple days ago and it didn't ask me, but I'll put the link in the chat so that you make sure that you're getting to the right one. So
Thank you.
Thank you. That sounds like a good idea.
Northwest Indie Book Fest.
And if you're not a person if you go to that, it's going to ask you at some point, Facebook will ask you to sign in. So you're going to sign in under, your own account, and then it will let you look at this and do whatever. on it, I don't know, you may be able to put in the initials NIB, because the page says Northwest Indie Book Fest. Maybe that's what I had wrong. It's not independent, it's indie. And Northwest Indie Book Fest, and then right after that it says capitalized NIB. So that might help you identify it too.
Yeah, I found it now. Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, I have one more question. So have you been doing any book signings?
Yeah, I've done a number of signings. I did a little bit of a book tour right after it was published. And I've been in 3 different states now doing signings. Did you have any
venues?
So I do a variety of different venues. Obviously bookstores are great, but you don't have to be in a bookstore. I've done libraries. Of course, libraries are also great. but I've also done like a couple of metaphysical stores because my work is pagan fiction, and so I am dealing with, you know, goddesses and ancient Celts and things like that. And so I've had 3 different metaphysical stores host me, and one of them was just amazing. Up in Sandpoint, actually, I packed a room. There was we had 30 chairs, and every chair was full, and there were people
Cool.
standing. At the little shop in Sandpoint. So I would say, you know, don't limit yourself. I've also done things at the 1912 Center here in Moscow. So yeah, wherever you think your readers are going to be, that's where I suggest going. And a lot of people are really open to having something different. So I reached out to a place in St. Mary's and did a book signing there. And, you know, if you can think of somewhere where people who are likely to read your book are going to be, go there. One of the things that I'm working with Carol down here is we're thinking about maybe doing events like open mic nights in a bar where people could read from their novels and then sign books there. You know, to do the whole books and brews thing. So there's lots of opportunities for signings.
That's great. Thank you.
And I'm working with Sharma at the downtown library system. It's well downtown, but all over the city. And if you want to get in on those signing opportunities, just shoot me an email. What we're doing is promoting both the South Hill and the North Side libraries. Book signings will be out in the main area, not in a room. So that way you've got traffic. Those 2 sites have the most traffic, but all of the local libraries would be amenable to having someone come. She works about 2 to 3 months out in advance. So what I'm going to send people on the list is just a little bit of information, like choose your top 3 dates, your first, the preferred date, and a couple others in case they're already taken, and your location. And then, like, if you have a number of books, series, or whatever, and your name. And she will be putting these on the calendar as I give them to her. So I'm doing it, I'm getting in the middle because I want to save her having to get she's very, very busy, extremely busy. And I don't want her overloaded with email, different people with the same questions, the same issues over, it's hard. Yeah. So we agreed that getting together on it would help. And I've got a lot.
Can I ask you a question about that? That sounds great. So it's a signing at the library. Are books then available for sale? How does that work?
You sell them yourself. You can do cash. If you've got the little square system, you can do that.
Okay, but so if you're traditionally published, you'd have to get books from your publisher to bring them in.
Yeah, you'd have that, or you could, because if you have friends that want to meet you down there, you could say that maybe they could order in advance from Auntie's, pick up the book and bring it down to you.
Right, I got you.
But otherwise, there's no way to stock at the library.
Yeah, right. I got you. Okay, awesome.
I'm thinking for a really unusual place to sell books that would get a lot of traffic is a grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done that yet, but I do have my eye on the Rosars in Lewiston. I'm thinking about that.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Steve, you got your hand up.
Yeah. There's actually a program for that. But it looked a little, it didn't look real easy to work with them. But there is a program in place that's called Authors in Grocery Stores. And there's somehow they want to get a piece of it or something. I'm not real sure. I
looked at that,
wasn't impressed.
Yeah, they only work with specific grocery stores. So like a Kroger, which I don't have any Krogers nearby.
Fred Meyer.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe they did Fred Meyer, but they had specific grocery stores that you had to use, and I didn't recognize any of them.
Yeah,
So
I
I was
only
thinking,
admire that is in Spokane.
I had a couple other things too.
Go ahead.
We're talking about a number of things. The library in Spokane Valley, I have been to see them about doing a book release there. And I've got a memoir that's coming out whenever that comes off the press. And it's not as formal arrangement, Linda, as what you've got going. They just
Right.
kind
Separate system.
of set it up on your own
Yeah.
and all of that. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to lead that with a press release that's going to go out to television, radio, and print media. Also, that book I wanted to mention that it's the first nonfiction thing that I've done in quite a while, and it's called To Teach, and it's a memoir of my roughly 4 decades in education, and it's embedded with a treatise on education as well. So that's going to be forthcoming. But what I wanted to mention about it was that I've never done pre-orders before, and I'm going to do them every time now because I have 66 pre-orders for that book.
Good for you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty exciting.
Have you done that, Khaliela?
I actually did a Kickstarter for my pre-order campaign and it worked really well. I was able to raise a little over $3,000 in 30 days. So I definitely recommend doing pre-orders. And I'm putting a link to press release info because my grandma worked at a newspaper. I have inside tips on how to get an author interview, or how to put up press releases in order to get good press for your event. So take a look at that, Stephen, and hopefully how to put together an author kit, because a lot of people don't realize you need a press kit when you're sending out press releases in order to get information. So I put all of that in there as well.
Yeah.
Bonnie.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. I agree with Khaliela on most of it except the press kit. Having been an editor of a small newspaper and a large newspaper, and then a public relations person for lots and lots of years, my feeling about press kits is they are a bloody waste of time, especially if you go into if you're going to larger newspapers, they pile up in the corner and then they go to the dumpster. So a better thing to do is to send the bare minimum, not a bare minimum, but a good news release. And by the way, it's a news release, not a press release, because you're releasing news, not press. That's an old-fashioned term. And photograph and maybe an excerpt from the book, because press kits literally go in the garbage. And maybe you have a different experience with that than I have, but boy, I'll tell you, lots and lots and lots of money has gone down the tubes with press kits. So I just want you to.
For me, it's electronic, but I'm not sending anything physical.
Yeah.
But in my folder, I've got, the author photo, the book image,
Yeah.
So the things that they're going to need.
Call that a press kit. Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose that's a press kit. To me, that's just a news release. Okay. We're just talking different terms here. Yeah. I just, in my years of in the PR business and the newspaper business, like I just say, there's dumpsters full of press kits. It just broke my heart that people would spend that much time and money and they would just, so good.
No, I just used
that's a good thing. Yeah,
a Google Drive folder, and I labeled it press.
Yeah.
And then I put my photos in there, the book's cover in there, information from reviews. That way I don't have to attach everything every time. You can just be like, here's the link. And when you send it out to whatever newspaper, and then they can fish out whatever they want from that kit.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Can I say one more thing? We have this is just throwing it out. We have we up on Sandpoint, we're called Sandpoint Writers on the Lake. We're having a writers contest as well on the 23rd of March, but it's a little bit different than the writers contests or competitions that we usually think of. This is something that the group has been doing for years and years and years. And basically it's a community writing contest, and it's kind of an open mic thing, right? And they come And you get 5 minutes to read anything, and we've got adult and youth group, and then the audience votes on who gets the prizes, and it's really fun. And it's very simple, and it's very informal, but it attracts a lot of attention. We get a huge variety. We don't try to categorize it except for age. And it's really been fun. So anyway, ours
Do you
is
have
coming up.
links to that information, Bonnie?
Yeah, I do. Our website person sort of has disappeared on us, so we need to well, she got busy. So the website is out of date, but I'm gonna get that brought up. Yes, I do. So I will send that to you.
Is that something you don't have on hand? You can't put it in the chat?
Uh,
I guess it doesn't matter so much for Spokane area people.
well, right, it's
not
it,
gonna-
well, that's really partly why. It's just pretty much for, if you want to drive up from Spokane, you're more than welcome. We'd love to have you. But it's one of those things, you gotta be on site for it, and it's, lasts for about 6-7 hours at the library.
Yeah.
But yes, Khaliela, I will do that.
Yeah, and when in March is it?
March 23rd, Saturday, March 23rd.
So you can
I'm
just
always
show,
up for a drive to Sandpoint.
Yeah, there you go. We're not that far away. And you don't have to register. It's free. You just kind of come and sign up, and we kind of go. If we have 15 people, we go for 15. If we have 35, we go for 35. It just depends. If we have 60, then we'll probably go for 2 days, but so it's really kind of fun because it is pretty laid back, and it's pretty much kind of old school. So it's,
And I
not
would
really.
say in relation to the libraries that, yeah, Steve, the two library systems here, just like the one in Sandpoint, the one in Coeur d'Alene, they're all different. They all have their own stuff. And I know the one in the library, and when I asked Sharma about checking open dates, I says, and I suppose I need to check open dates, and she wrote back to check what dates, because they don't do it the same way. And so, then I went on and I looked at the events list, and oh my God, it's miles long. And so I think that's the difference. The city system is so huge that there's stuff everywhere. And that's why Sharma is just almost, I would think, overwhelmed. I mean, I can't believe what she's having to do. So that's why we agreed that I'd get involved and kind of, but if you want to do something in the valley, then you need to do it their way, which is you make your own contact there. You go in and fill in the actual appointment day or the day that you want to do it.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
You get put on the calendar there when you get it, which I obviously can't do yet because I don't know exactly when I'm going to have the book.
Right. Okay. All righty. Okay, well, I think we're running out of time here, and if anybody has a last minute emergency question, feel free. You could type things in the chat for a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording portion, and let's see if I can.